Saturday, 6:45 in the morning. I am standing on bed number 2 with a green garden hose in my right hand, and I can feel the cold water running over my knuckles because the nozzle leaks at the joint where the brass meets the plastic. The soil is dark for about 30 seconds after the water hits it. Then it fades back to pale gray, like a stain drying on concrete. I've been doing this every morning for 14 weeks straight, and the tomatoes to my left look exactly the same as they did in late May. Slightly yellow on the lower leaves, a little wilted by noon, recovering by evening. Same cycle every single day. That particular Saturday, I stood there long enough to watch the first patch of water I had sprayed go from dark to light. I counted. 38 seconds. 38 seconds and the surface was dry again, as if I had not been there. I turned off the hose, coiled it on the hook by the shed, and did not touch it for 9 days. What happened to the garden in those 9 days changed how I water permanently. It will change how you water too, because the math behind it is not complicated. It is a math that nobody runs, because running it means admitting the opposite has been happening all along. An average backyard garden, 4 raised beds, roughly 200 square feet of growing space, uses about 300 liters of water per week under standard watering. The recommendation: hose or watering can every morning or every other morning, 2 to 3 liters per plant. Wet the soil surface. Go inside, repeat tomorrow. Most gardening books call this responsible. Most extension services endorse it. I followed it for 2 years. And for 2 years, most of that water never reached a root. I wanted to see the number for myself. So in July 2024, I set up a simple experiment. 2 identical plastic containers, open top, each holding 4 liters of the same garden soil from the same bag. Container A, bare soil, nothing on top. Container B, same soil, covered with 8 centimeters of shredded leaves from my oak tree. I gave each container exactly 1 liter of water at 7 a.m. on a Tuesday and weighed them on a kitchen scale every 6 hours. 7 a.m., 1 p.m., 7 p.m., 1 a.m. For 5 consecutive days. Ambient temperature ranged from 24 to 31 degrees Celsius. No rain. The bare container lost 60% of its water weight in the first 48 hours. Not gradually. The bulk of the loss happened between noon and 6 p.m. each day, during peak solar hours. By day 5, the soil in Container A was powder dry down to the bottom. Container B lost 11% in the same 48-hour window. By day 5, the top of the leaf layer was dry and papery, but the soil underneath was still cool and damp when I pushed my finger in. Same water, same sun, same temperature, same soil. One variable changed, a layer of dead leaves sitting on top. 60% evaporation from bare soil, 11% through a mulch cover. Not a small difference, the difference between feeding plants and feeding the atmosphere. Scale that to a full garden. A garden getting 300 liters a week with 60% evaporating before reaching root depth sends roughly 180 liters into the air every 7 days. Over a 26-week growing season, April through September in my zone, the total reaches approximately 4,700 liters that did nothing for a single plant. At my local municipal rate of $4.20 per 1,000 liters, the vapor alone costs about $20 per season. $20 of water that turned into humidity before noon. Now add time. 15 minutes a day with a hose or watering can. 7 days a week, 26 weeks. The total, 45.5 hours per season spent standing in a garden, holding water, watching it disappear. Most people do not count the time. I did not count it until I wrote it down on a calendar. 45 hours is more than a full work week. It is 11 Saturday mornings gone for water that mostly evaporated. The money and the time are bad enough. The part that bothered me more was what daily surface watering does to roots. When water arrives at the top 5 centimeters of soil every morning, roots follow it there. Roots are not loyal. Roots are opportunistic. They go where the water is, and they stop going deeper when the water stops going deeper. If water shows up at 5 centimeters, roots build their density there. A thick, shallow mat right under the surface. Effective as long as the hose keeps showing up on schedule. Skip 1 day in August. Skip 2. The shallow root mat has no backup plan. Deeper soil, 15 or 20 centimeters down, still holds moisture from last week's rain. The roots cannot reach it. They are not built for depth. They are built for the schedule. The plant wilts, not from drought, from dependency. The daily schedule trained roots to wait, and without it, the plant had nowhere else to go. I ran this cycle for 2 full seasons without understanding it. I saw wilting and assumed more water was the answer. More water kept the roots shallow. Shallow roots wilted faster. I watered even more. A feedback loop, and I was the engine driving it. By August of my 2nd year, I was watering twice a day, morning and evening, and the tomato plants still looked tired by mid-afternoon. I was spending more time and more water to produce the same mediocre result. I had never once considered that the problem might be the method itself, not the volume. The change is one thing, not a system of 5 things, not a renovation. One material, applied once per season, combined with 1 shift in habit. Mulch, 8 centimeters of organic mulch on the soil surface, and a switch from daily shallow sprinkle to weekly deep soak. The entire method. No equipment to buy, no drip lines to install, no timer to program. Everything else I am about to describe is detail. The core is 2 words, cover and depth. Materials first. The best mulch I have used for water retention is shredded leaves. Free, effective, and abundant for anyone with even 1 deciduous tree on or near the property. A single mature oak drops roughly 200,000 leaves per season, enough to fill 20 large yard bags. Shredded by a mower or leaf shredder, that volume covers about 200 square feet at 8 centimeters deep. A standard suburban lot with 2 to 4 trees produces enough leaf material to mulch 400 square feet. Twice what most backyard gardens need. No trees nearby? Neighbors bag their leaves every fall and set them on the curb. I collected 7 bags from 3 houses on my street last November. Free. They were glad to have them gone. Grass clippings work too, but apply them in thin layers, 2 to 3 centimeters at a time, and let each layer dry slightly before adding the next. A thick, wet mat of fresh grass clippings can go anaerobic, turning into a slimy layer that smells like vinegar and repels water rather than holding it. Straw from a feed store runs about $5 per bale. 1 bale covers roughly 100 square feet. Cardboard, the plain brown kind from shipping boxes, tape removed, works as a base layer under any of these materials. It suppresses weeds and holds additional moisture at the soil surface. The one material I avoid against vegetable stems is fresh wood chips. During the first months of decomposition, raw wood chips can temporarily pull nitrogen from the top centimeter of soil. It is not a disaster. The nitrogen returns as the chips break down, but it can stunt young transplants if chips sit directly against the stem. Aged wood chips, composted for 6 months or more, are fine. For vegetable beds, I prefer leaves and straw. They decompose within a single season, feeding the soil while protecting it, and they do not create a nitrogen competition window. Thickness is not a guess. I tested it. In June 2024, same bed, 3 sections side by side. Section 1, 4 centimeters of shredded leaves. Section 2, 8 centimeters. Section 3, 12 centimeters. Identical soil underneath, watered to saturation on day 1, then left alone for 14 days. No rain in that window. On day 14, I dug down in each section and checked moisture at 10 centimeters below the soil surface with a probe. Under 4 centimeters of mulch, dry. The probe came out clean. Under 8 centimeters, damp. The probe showed visible moisture on the lower third. Under 12 centimeters, damp to wet. Probe was moist along its full length. The jump from 4 to 8 was dramatic, the difference between a dead-dry root zone and a living one. The jump from 8 to 12 was marginal. 8 centimeters is the threshold where the mulch layer becomes thick enough to meaningfully block solar evaporation during peak heat. Below that, sunlight and wind still dry the soil surface faster than the mulch can buffer. Above that, returns diminish and a new problem appears: slugs. Thick mulch above 10 to 12 centimeters creates a cool, damp habitat that slugs love, especially against lettuce and strawberries. 8 centimeters is the number. Thick enough to hold moisture. Thin enough to avoid inviting pests. Application is straightforward, but 3 details matter. First, clear visible weeds by hand. Pull, do not dig. Disturbing the soil surface exposes buried weed seeds to light and breaks fungal networks that help retain moisture, the opposite of the goal. Second, if the soil is bone dry, give it 1 deep soak first. Let it absorb for about an hour. The mulch should sit on moist soil, not dry powder, because the contact layer is where moisture exchange happens. Mulch on dry soil creates an air gap underneath, and air gaps are where evaporation still wins. Third, and this is the detail most people skip, leave a gap of roughly 3 centimeters between the mulch edge and any plant stem. Tomatoes, peppers, squash, eggplant especially. Mulch piled against a stem holds moisture against the bark, and warm moisture against bark invites stem rot and fungal infection. 3 centimeters of clear space lets air circulate at the base. Cover every other visible patch of dirt. Visible soil means evaporation has a window. Then press the mulch down gently with open palms. Not packed, not fluffy. Contact with the soil surface matters. Capillary action wicks moisture upward into the mulch layer and keeps the exchange zone active. Now the watering shift. This is the part that feels wrong for the first 2 weeks, and I want to be honest about that. After 14 weeks of daily watering, switching to once per week felt like neglect. The first week, the soil surface looked dry by Wednesday. My instinct screamed to grab the hose. I did not. I checked at depth instead, pushed a chopstick down 15 centimeters, left it for an hour, pulled it out. The bottom half was damp. The plants were fine. They looked stressed on the surface, but the roots were finding water I could not see. The method, instead of 2 to 3 liters per plant every morning, each plant gets 10 to 15 liters once per week, all at once, slowly. The word deep is the entire point. I used the hose with no nozzle, open end, laid at the base of the plant on the lowest flow the tap allows. A thin, quiet stream. It takes about 4 to 5 minutes per bed. The water does not splash, does not run, does not beat off the surface. It seeps. Under the mulch, it hits soil that is already cool and slightly moist from last week's soak, and it moves downward, not sideways. On bare hot dirt, water pools on the surface, runs to the lowest edge, and evaporates. Under mulch, gravity wins over sun. Timing matters less than people think, but one window is better than others. I water early morning, before 8 a.m. The soil is coolest then. Evaporation is lowest. The mulch layer has released its nighttime condensation back into the soil, and the whole system is primed to absorb. Watering at midday wastes roughly 15% more to evaporation, even through mulch, based on my container tests. Evening watering is fine for retention, but can increase fungal pressure if foliage stays wet overnight. Morning is the cleanest window. What happens underground over the following weeks is the mechanism that makes this permanent. When water arrives deep and infrequently, roots chase it. A tomato plant on a daily surface schedule builds its root density in the top 5 to 8 centimeters. Same variety, same soil, weekly deep soak through mulch, and within 6 weeks, roots reach 20 to 30 centimeters. I pulled 2 tomato plants in late September 2024 to compare. Plant 1, from the daily watered bed, had a root ball that fit in one hand, compact, dense, shallow. Plant 2, from the mulched weekly bed, had roots that filled a 5-gallon bucket, long, branching, deep. I held them side by side in the afternoon light and took a photo I still have on my phone. Same variety, Roma. Same transplant date, May 14th. Same soil mix, same fertilizer. The only difference was water delivery. Deep roots access a reservoir that shallow roots never touch. Below 15 centimeters, soil temperature stays relatively stable, even when the surface hits 35 degrees in August. That cooler layer holds moisture from rain events days after the top has dried. A plant with 30-centimeter roots has a water source the hose cannot replicate, because that source is the earth itself, buffered by depth, and the mulch layer above is the lid that keeps it sealed. 14.2 kilograms. My 4 tomato plants produced that in 2024, the first full season under mulch with weekly deep watering. In 2023, same beds, same varieties, daily hose watering, no mulch, 9.1 kilograms, a 56% increase in yield. I did not add more fertilizer. I did not amend the soil. I did not change varieties or planting dates. I covered the ground and changed when and how water arrived. One variable, 56%. Total water use for the season. Old method, 300 liters per week for 26 weeks, 7,800 liters. New method, 60 liters per week, 1,560 liters. Difference, 6,240 liters I did not use. An 80% reduction. Time from 45.5 hours of hose holding to 4.5 hours of weekly soaking. Cost of the mulch? 0. Leaves I raked from my yard in November, bagged, stored in the shed, spread in April. I want to explain why this works at a level deeper than technique, because understanding the principle is what stops a person from reaching for the hose the first time a heat wave hits and the neighbor is out on his lawn at dawn, spraying water in wide arcs, and every instinct says, do the same. Walk into any forest nearby. Stand still for 10 seconds. Smell the floor. That specific, dark, slightly sweet, slightly sharp scent of leaves decomposing in layers. Not rot, decomposition. There is a difference. Rot smells like a closed container. Forest floor decomposition smells like rain on warm wood. Push your boot into the leaf litter. Feel the resistance, a spongy give under the dry crust. Underneath, where the old leaves have melted into the soil, the ground is cool to the touch, even if the air above is 32 degrees. Pull back a fistful of litter and look at the boundary layer. The soil surface is black. It glistens faintly. White threads of fungal mycelium weave through the top centimeter like a net woven by something too patient to notice. This soil has not been watered by any person. No irrigation, no hose, no drip line, no schedule. Rain falls when it falls, sometimes not for 3 weeks in summer. The litter holds the moisture. Fungi distribute. Roots pull from depth. The system has operated this way for roughly 400 million years. It has never required a timer. Your garden is not a forest. The density of extraction is higher. A tomato plant pulls more water per square meter per day than an oak seedling in its first decade. I am not suggesting covering the beds and walk away for the season. I am saying the principle transfers directly. A covered surface loses dramatically less than a bare one. A deep root system finds water that a shallow one cannot. The gap between those two realities, between covered and bare, between deep and shallow, is where 80% of the water was going every week. Into the air, into nothing. There is a sound I heard in mid-July that convinced me more than any spreadsheet. 3 weeks after I stopped daily watering, I knelt beside bed 3, pulled back the corner of the mulch layer, and pressed my thumb into the soil underneath. The mulch on top was warm and dry, straw-colored, papery, crackling faintly when I moved it. But the soil below was dark, cool, faintly damp. I pushed my thumb in and heard a soft, wet give, a sound like pressing into a sponge that is not wrung out. The soil was holding water at a depth I had never achieved with 2 years of daily hosing, and I had not added a single liter in 9 days. The earthworms had come back too, 3 of them, pale pink, moving slowly through the top 5 centimeters. In 2 years of daily watering, I had never seen an earthworm in that bed. I stayed kneeling in the dirt for a while. I realized I had spent 2 years solving the wrong problem. I assumed my garden needed more water. It needed less. Or rather, it needed a lid. One habit I stopped that I want you to consider. I stopped checking the soil surface to decide whether to water. Under mulch, the surface is always dry. Exactly the point. The mulch is the sacrificial layer, the shield between sun and soil. Poking a finger into the top centimeter of mulch and feeling dry tells nothing about root depth. Nothing. It is like checking the paint on a roof to see if the basement is flooded. Wrong layer. Buy a soil moisture meter, $8 at any hardware store. Or push a wooden chopstick 15 centimeters straight down into the bed and leave it for an hour. Pull it out. If the bottom half is dark and damp, the roots have water. If it is dry all the way through, give the bed a deep soak. This single habit change, checking depth instead of surface, eliminates the panic watering that restarts the shallow root cycle and undoes every gain. Full season numbers side by side. Old method, 300 liters per week, 26 weeks, 7,800 liters total, $4.20 per 1,000 liters. Total water cost approximately $33. Time 45.5 hours. Yield 9.1 kilograms of tomatoes from 4 plants. New method, 60 liters per week, 26 weeks, 1,560 liters total. Water cost approximately $7. Time 4.5 hours. Yield 14.2 kilograms from the same 4 plants. Savings $26 in water, 41 hours of time, and 5 extra kilograms of food that grew because the roots went where they were supposed to go. Input cost of the change, leaves from a tree that was going to drop them whether I used them or not. 41 hours and $26. Count yours. Measure your water for 1 normal week. Time the hose. Read the meter. Note the minutes. Multiply by 26. Look at the number. Then imagine 80% of it gone and the harvest bigger. The math is not hard. It is uncomfortable because it means the effort was not too little. It was the wrong kind. $7. 1 full season of water for 200 square feet of food. The hose is still hanging on the hook by the shed. I have not uncoiled it since last April. How much does a single egg from a backyard actually cost? I have been counting the chickens the same way I counted the water. Every dollar, every hour, every gram of feed. There are two answers. Neither one is the number you expect.